Hey there, fools. Big T, and I'm back with another video. In this video, here will be me discussing what I feel are the top 5 reasons the PS1 Classic, PlayStation 1 Classic failed. So let's get into it. Number 5. Alright, so my number 5 reason why I feel like the PS1 Classic did not do well is that the PlayStation is not quite classic enough. And what I mean by that is that that era is not quite old enough that people have the kind of same nostalgia that they might have for even the Atari or the Nintendo or the Super Nintendo. Maybe that's just a bigger reason that people realize, but they just might not feel that that era of video gaming is quite classic enough. Maybe we need another 5 to 10 years or so. That might be one of the reasons why it just didn't do well. Number 4. All right, so my number 4 reason is that, that era of video gaming just didn't age well. And it's funny because I hear that a lot. I don't feel that way, but a lot of people seem to be feeling that way, that the 3D polygons were in their infancy at that time. You know, that was basically the first era where we got full-on 3D games. 2D games were still a thing, but definitely in the 5th gen, that was something that was being pushed by all major companies at the time. A lot of companies were kind of shying away from 2D games, thinking that 3D games was the future. And so you saw a lot more during the PlayStation 1, that is the original PlayStation, the N64, and the Sega Saturn era. I don't feel that way. I'm kind of a nostalgic gamer, but a lot of people just might feel like the visuals of that era don't hold up as well today, and just not something that people really want to play. Number 3. All right, so my number 3 reason I think is a pretty big reason: the marketing and the price. I kind of feel like when the PS1 Classic was announced, it was a pretty big surprise to pretty much everybody. Nobody saw it coming, and so there wasn't really a lot of time when it was announced and when the games were coming for there to be some kind of build-up really for it. There was kind of, but again, looking at all the other reasons as to why it may not have done well, it might have needed more time to develop and get people, more hyped about it. And you're definitely going to need some hype at that price point of $100. Yes, it is by far one of the most expensive plug-and-play systems we ever had. I think maybe that Neo Geo system was more expensive, but that was kind of hitting a more niche market. Sony wanted to hit the same kind of market that Nintendo hit with NES Classic and SNES Classic, and possibly even Sega with those AT game systems that they put out. They wanted to hit a more mass market, and I think that price point was just not what they needed to get people to give that impulse buy. Impulse buy is a big thing. You have the nostalgia play, and if it's a good enough price, you'll get an impulse buy from those fans of that era. So I think, with the marketing, not much time was given to that, not much hype surrounding it, and that price point was just a little bit too much for a lot of people. Number 2. Number 2 is actually 2 things. It's the interface of the console itself as well as the controller. There are some cool things there, especially with the way it looks when you have your game scrolling. It has that classic PlayStation kind of look to it. Design wise, it has the sound, the startup, that classic PlayStation startup, this. There were some good things there, but obviously there weren't enough options in the setup itself, the interface itself. You couldn't do borders. There was issues there. You couldn't do, color screens or, different types of filters. Gamers today are really tech savvy when it comes to getting the look and feel of the games that they remember from back in the day. There are a lot of options out there. A lot of them are very expensive, and that's where, a system like this could come in handy and tap into a different market where they don't have to pay as much to get what they want. They want their scan lines, they want that kind of CRT look, or not. Maybe they want a more smooth look, maybe they want a sharper look. And the PlayStation Classic basically gave you no options to when it comes to any of that stuff. The controller, man, they went with the original D-pad only PlayStation controller, which obviously cuts off many games that it was able to play, or just even not the games themselves, but how you played those games. A lot of people remember the DualShock more than they do the original PlayStation controller because of its limitations, and that I think that definitely hurt it.
Honorable mention.
So I gave all those reasons, and I'm sure there's one out there that you guys are thinking, why isn't this on the list? And I'm going to give it my honorable mention because I think for the most part, most people wouldn't care or even notice this reason. Gamers, you know, like myself and, you know, that are on YouTube who do gaming for their channels, they recognize this stuff right away. But I think the average consumer wouldn't have noticed or cared about how the games performed. And obviously I'm talking about the emulator that's in the PlayStation 1 Classic itself. It's not very good. It's really, the games don't run very well. A lot of the games run on PAL, which means instead of 60 frames, they're running at 50. And that was just a mess. But I think Sony could have weathered that if the game selection was better and a lot of the other things were in place. If the game system came out at $50 at first, maybe people would have looked at it differently. But I just think at this point, people are just like, nah, you know, that holiday season is gone. The impulse buy chance that they had to grab gamers to buy this thing is gone. And it's just not going to happen. So that's why I'm calling it my honorable mention. Number one. And so the number one reason I believe the PlayStation Classic failed, bombed, is sitting in stores right now. There's multiple people sharing, you know, pictures that they took at Walmart or Best Buy or wherever. And those games, those systems are just stacked up and just sitting there. Even at a discounted price, it's been cut in half at this point to $50, and it's still not selling. The number one reason is the games themselves. A lot of fans probably just feel like the games that were offered, there were a few of them that were definitely classics, like your Metal Gear Solids and whatnot. But at this point, especially, we've had remakes of these games. You have Twin Snakes on GameCube for Metal Gear Solid. The games just weren't there. And obviously people wanted more games like Crash and Spyro because of the recent re-releases or the remasters of those games. You know, people just would rather play those than play the old system. I feel like nostalgia for the PS1 isn't as strong for the Sega Saturn because of Sega Saturn scarcity, so there's a lot of nostalgia with that system. And the N64. The N64 truly has classic games, classic Nintendo games. And because the PlayStation led with third-party games, it didn't have enough Sony, you know, in-house games that made it just, you know, made it that system, that made it that classic, you know, experience that you would get from a Super Mario 64 or even a Nights into Dreams on Sega Saturn. So without that, I think that was the main reason this system just didn't do well. Alright, so that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about my list here. Do you agree? Do you disagree about where on the list certain things are, or the fact that I left off the emulator? I really feel strongly that they could have weathered that to some degree. Obviously, people putting stuff on YouTube would have caused some other consumers to not buy it, but I think they could have weathered that if these other things were more in line with what people wanted. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you as always for watching and listening, and now see you fools next time. Peace out.